What's going on, fellow A-Plusters? Welcome to a brand new episode of A-Plus Hero Report. This is your host, as always, Adam Perez, coming through once again, along with Stewart, baby, as we got ourselves a fantastic weekend in store for you guys. May the 4th be with you. I hope the force is strong wherever you guys are certainly at. We got a couple of Star Wars content we're set to go ahead and drop on our YouTube channel today. And I think we might even have something for you guys on Monday also. But we wanted to go ahead and actually sit down and talk with you guys about the Phantom Menace. That's right, revisiting the Phantom Menace after 25 years because it has in fact been re-released in theaters. I'm not sure if you guys are aware of this, but it is currently in theaters all weekend long. Some theaters might actually be doing an entire episodic marathon for you guys, 1 through 9. But I had the opportunity to go ahead and check out episode 1, The Phantom Menace, the 25th anniversary, as of yesterday evening, especially so I can get me a first look at the acolytes as they wind up giving us a little bit of a sneak peek at the tail end of the film itself. You could definitely expect that video to drop in about 2 hours from now over on our YouTube page. So you get an idea of a brief description of what the scene was like and certainly my thoughts on it. So a lot of Star Wars certainly going around to celebrate here, man. Are you excited to talk some Phantom Menace with me, Stuart? How's your Star Wars weekend been so far?
Oh man, I'm kind of jealous. You got to sit and relax and watch Phantom Menace. I had to work Phantom Menace at my movie theater.
Oh,
We're one
no.
of the movie theaters doing the 9-movie marathon, so I ended up
Nice.
having a 5 to 1:30 shift. I think we just finished like episode 2 as I was like leaving. So wish the graveyard shift luck on that one. It's the first time our theater's been open like this long since I worked there. And yeah, it is cool though, because again, because of our theater, because we're also a restaurant, I get to kind of walk in and watch a little bits of the movie as I'm running food. But what's funny is you mentioned the Alkalite for you. You said it was actually at the end of the Phantom Menace when they showed you the preview.
Yeah. And right after the edits, the end credit scenes.
Oh, okay. Because for us, it was the opposite. We showed it at the very beginning before the Phantom Menace actually started,
Oh.
and like for me, normally I can kind of run food while something's playing in the background easily. But when that trailer started, I'm like, I'm so sorry. I have to step aside for a minute because if I try to run food, because you have to remember what table you're running to. So I'll get a ticket that says 1432, and then usually they expect you to carry 2 foods. So like one for 1432, one for 1739. It's like I can normally memorize that while there's a movie going on in the background because I don't have to pay attention to the movie. But this, it's like there's no way my brain was going to be able to ignore this. So if I tried running food while that was playing, I was going to be dropping it at the wrong tables. So I'm like, no, I need to stop and just watch this, and then I'll get back to work.
That's interesting. I was kind of curious how that works now that you mention it, because I thought I heard the news, or they had promoted it as it's going to be at the end of the film. I was kind of under the impression before I knew that it was going to be at the beginning. So did they give you like a brand new Phantom Menace reel with the Acolyte attached to it at the front, or are you guys able to move it back and forth if you want?
I assume because it's digital, so we probably were just able to
Mm,
move it in front
gotcha.
for us. But yeah, we
Yeah,
huh?
it kind of played like a Marvel movie in the sense of like the post-credit scene is what it felt like
Yeah.
when we
Actually,
did
that's
it.
a good point. It probably would have been better if we saved it till the very end of the movie.
But regardless, I'm glad you got a chance to certainly check it out. Again, I will be giving my thoughts on the Acolyte first look in about 2 hours or so. I've got it set to go ahead and drop at 2 p.m. Central Time. So we definitely will be talking a little bit about the little brief glimpse that we wind up getting into the Acolyte. And we did get ourselves a trailer today too for the Acolyte. So I just recorded a reaction that's probably going to drop on TikTok, and then after this, I'll probably pre-record a trailer review for the Acolyte trailer that we wind up getting today. But we are here, Stuart, to celebrate the Phantom Menace, man. 25 years it's been around. Getting the opportunity to sit down in theaters and watch it again, I got to tell you, it definitely brought back some nostalgic memories, because I do remember going to see this movie in theaters for the first time, and that definitely ages me so incredibly much. But I remember my first experience seeing it in the first time in theaters, and that was the only time I've seen it in theaters. You know, I've seen it a few times clearly back at home over the years, but to be able to actually go to the movie theater and experience it again on the big screen where Star Wars belongs, just felt so incredibly fitting. It felt cinematic still, even after 25 years, man.
Oh yeah. So I've seen the movie in theaters twice. The second time I saw it was when The Force Awakens was coming out, and kind of like what we're doing at the Alamo Draft House right now. There was a marathon leading into The Force Awakens, so it was right before the movie like premiered. So it was great because we were in the theater all day, so I didn't have to worry about because when it started, I think The Force Awakens was getting a release like early in some theaters. So because we were in the theater all day, I did not have to worry about getting any spoilers, which was incredibly nice. But yeah, that was my second time watching the Phantom Menace, was for that marathon. My first time watching the Phantom Menace in theaters, however, it's so funny. It's one of the earliest movies I actually remember seeing in theater, because I think I was 4 years old when that movie came out, and my dad took me and my siblings to go see it. And it's really funny because one thing people will say about this movie, which I will agree with, is that the plot is way too confusing for little kids to understand. And that is true. I was 4 years old. I went into the movie, did not know at all what was going on. The only things I really knew what were happening were the setups for things that we would later see. Like I knew, okay, the young kid turns into Darth Vader. The young guy turns into the old guy, later on. That was basically my like 4-year-old brain understanding of, how the story of Star Wars. But I still love that movie, even as a kid. So just because kids don't understand the plot, that doesn't mean they're not going to be entertained by it. I am an example of someone who did not understand Phantom Menace when he saw it in theaters, and yet I enjoyed it thoroughly.
Yeah, I mean, taxations, trade federations, blockades, the Senate, it definitely goes over your head a little bit as a kid. But I think for me, I think that's kind of I don't want to say the magic of it, but I feel like as I've gotten older, it is a movie that I've come to appreciate a little bit more each and every time. It's definitely not my favorite of the Star Wars films, but it certainly has grown on me each time that I certainly watch it. And I feel like I pick out new things too each time that I watch it that make it even that much more enjoyable for me. Like, even after 25 years, I think the graphics, I like the special effects. I think the sound and everything quality still really hold up if you watch it in the movie theater. There are kind of some instances in the very beginning of the film that I think some of the CGI looks a little questionable, like dated in the sense of like, yeah, it has been 25 years. But especially as the movie goes on, and especially towards the end when you get the big climactic space battle and stuff, I mean, it still looks good, man, on the big screen. I think I saw it laser projection at the AMC that we had. I was trying to find it in like on an IMAX screen or a Dolby screen. I couldn't find it. They didn't up the grading in that regards. But if you can find yourself a good theater to go ahead and watch the Phantom Menace this weekend, I highly recommend it because it definitely still holds up in that regards. And Stuart, even 25 years later, man, we kind of talked about this when we ranked our favorite lightsaber battles. Still the best lightsaber battle, man. Darth Maul versus Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan. And it's one of those things that, like, going back and thinking about it, have we ever seen a 2-on-1, a 2v1 Jedi versus Sith after that?
I think we got Dooku in the next movie with Dooku versus Obi-Wan and Anakin.
Right, but they handled him single-handedly, though, right? Like, Anakin rushed in on his own. Obi-Wan didn't kind of come through. Well, that's true. You know what? In
I meant Revenge of the Sith.
Revenge of the Sith. You're right. They did kind of tackle 2v1 in Revenge of the Sith a little bit, but this one was just done so brilliantly, man. And especially I think as the first time getting the opportunity to see Jedi in their prime and seeing them tackle a Sith together. Just the maneuvers, who comes in, like the coordination. I think like you could see the chemistry between Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan that really puts it over the top. The choreography from Nick Gillard, I mean, it was just splendid to watch, and it's still incredible to watch 25 years later, man.
If I'm not mistaken, I believe Nick Allard was originally not even meant to be like Darth Maul. He was meant to just be like there for like
No, you're
being a
thinking Ray
stunt
Park.
double.
Ray Park.
Sorry, yeah, Ray Park, yeah.
Ray Park.
Like he wasn't meant to be Darth Maul. He was meant to just be there as like a stunt double and someone who helps out with the choreography. But then I guess like some point like during the casting, George Lucas was just like, well, he doesn't really have much line, so I guess experience doesn't matter that much. Why not just cast him as in the role of Darth Maul?
Yeah, I'm so glad Ray Park was Darth Maul, man. He was incredible. I did get the opportunity to meet him at a Star Wars celebration in Indianapolis, I think once. I think it was leading into the Revenge of the Sith film. So I had the opportunity to meet him briefly there. Yeah, man. Look, let me get the cons out of the way in regards to the Phantom
But
Menace real quick.
before you do though,
Yeah,
just
let's
because
get
we
the
talked
cons out
about
of the way.
visuals, I do want to give like kind of my thoughts on like the overall aesthetic. And so something I really do like about the Phantom Menace is that it is the first like Star Wars movie, of course, that like utilizes CG in it. And unlike episodes 2 and 3, though, I feel like CG was actually really well utilized in this one. Like, yes, at times, especially during the Gungan droid battle, there are definitely times where it looks pretty bad and definitely dated. But I think because a lot of it still is very practical and the CG is really just there to kind of enhance what's already like, been built. I think that's one of the things that helps it hold up a little bit more than episodes 2 and 3, because for 2 and 3, you mentioned the space battles in Phantom Menace and how that looks good. Yes, in 2 and 3, I don't think there's ever been a Star Wars movie where the space battles didn't look really, really cool. So that continues, of course, through episodes 2 and 3. However, during a lot of the CG battles, to me, they end up looking a little more dated than the Phantom Menace, because a lot of times when you have like a big CG battle going on, it'll be like one person in front of a green screen, and then you have all the CG clone troopers and then the droids like fighting in the background. And that's when I feel like these movies end up looking like really, really fake and dated at times. But with Phantom Menace, since you don't have that anywhere near as much as you do in Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith, I think that's one of the things that helps it kind of like still looking good to this day.
Yeah, and also I think, Phantom Menace takes place a lot during the daytime. It is. I do think it's pretty interesting too to kind of see how they handle CGI in broad daylight. I almost feel like you can notice things a little bit more. Like you don't have the darkness or the shadows or the clouds to kind of cover up some of the little telltale signs here that the CGI may not necessarily be the cleanest. So I do think that could be an issue for it too.
That is true. But I also think because it was early CG, probably doing that kind of texture, like shadowing textures, might have been like a lot more difficult. So it may have actually been like a conscious decision of George Lucas to go, I mean, yeah, we could add some shadow over it and it could hide some of the lesser fine details. But at the same time, that would probably, CG's new, that would cost too much money. So we should probably just stick to daylight. That
I
was
love
my
your
George Lucas
I love
impression.
your George Lucas impression, man. There was a part of me after watching this movie, I wanted to go back and rewatch all the special features from the Phantom Menace off the Blu-ray and DVD, because that's the one thing I do miss about DVD and Blu-ray box sets is all the great special features that used to be loaded on those things.
I
But yeah.
wish I had this magazine from like when the movie came out, because we used to have this magazine that basically gave like a lot of behind the scenes photos of it, and it was my first time really understanding the concept of movie magic and like how how the cameras and the special effects trick you into seeing something that it wasn't actually like there on set. Because yeah, it shows like what the lightsabers look like without the CG enhancements. It showed like some photos of just the actors training for the big fight against Darth Maul. It was a cool magazine.
Um, so let's get into this film a little bit. I do want to knock out just the cons briefly before we gush about the great things that we really love about this film. And the things that even after watching it highlighted to me some things that I kind of missed before or I really liked expanded upon. So let's just get the cons out of the way briefly. For me, and I think this has always been an issue for the Phantom Menace, is that the first act is always rough for me. You know, the first act is a little hit or miss. I always, with the exception of seeing Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan on the Trade Federation ship and taking out the droids, there's always something cool about seeing Qui-Gon just launch his lightsaber into the door and try and melt it away. You know, but aside from that, the first act has always been kind of hit or miss. I did love the introduction to the Jedi, but this film doesn't really pick up for me until we actually get to Tatooine and we're introduced to Anakin. And one thing that I will say, Stuart, for me, I think aside from our two Jedi, my favorite character in this movie is Watto, for sure, the junkyard guy.
Oh, okay. It took me a minute to remember which one was Watto.
Yeah, he's like my favorite character in this. I feel like if there's anybody that did the best with what they were given script wise, it's the voice actor that played Watto in here. There's just something, he just felt so convincing to me as a character and so believable as a CGI character in the world that he was living in, how he expressed himself when it comes to talking to Qui-Gon. I mean, he's like, what are you doing waving your hand around like that? You know,
what do you think you're some sort of Jedi?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Mind tricks don't work on me, only money. You know, like he's got some great lines in here, but especially when he has to give up Anakin, you can like just the CGI, and I think the voice for Watto just really brought him to life for me. And I can't believe I'm saying that Watto is like my third favorite character in this entire movie, but he really is.
Yeah, you know, I think one thing that's really funny about Watto is that, like, as a kid, I also, like, you know, used to love that character, and I used to, like, kind of weirdly enough think of him as like kind of a I don't want to say full-on father figure, but definitely like an uncle figure to Anakin. As a kid, that's what I thought. And then kind of like, you know, as I get older, I'm like, you know, it's interesting because he doesn't like fully disrespect Anakin, but he is still clearly a slave, you know, for like Anakin is still clearly a slave for him. But it's just so funny how like that relationship dynamic between the two of them is, because like I don't know. It like as a kid, because Anakin is always so positive, you get this idea that maybe he doesn't have it bad as probably other people on Tatooine. And then you get to I mean, I know we're talking about Phantom Menace, but, you know, quick tangent, you get to the Clone Wars, and then you get to one specific episode where Anakin finds out about a slave planet, and you see, oh, no, he was hiding his pain with a smile. He, you know, even though Watto, you know, on screen seems like he's treating Anakin with somewhat of respect, again, you know, ignoring the child labor laws kind of stuff that he's clearly breaking. But, yeah, no, clearly, you know, when you look at kind of Anakin, the man that becomes, clearly he is the kind of kid that was hiding his pain with a smile.
Yeah, absolutely. So a little hit or miss first act for me. Enjoyed the introduction to the Jedi clearly, but this film really doesn't pick up for me until we get into something like the Tatooine a little bit, and then the build up into the pod race. And then if I had another con in here, it's really just George Lucas's directing, man. You know, the story is definitely there. I wouldn't even say it's convoluted. I think because the fact that now I'm 41 years old, I can you know, I understand the story a lot better. As a kid, it definitely felt a little bit more convoluted for me. But I think his directing lacked the ability to really get the best out of his actors. You know, I wish that there were maybe a couple more takes. I wish he was able to really explain to the actors what he was looking for in particular scenes, because some of the performances can seem a little bit wooden, the way that their lines are delivered in here. And I even put in my notes, there are some scenes that linger a little too long with like nothing happening. And it's usually like the very tail end of a scene that they hold the camera on to somebody smile a little bit too long instead of editing that down and then jump into the next scene. They're just awkward sort of moments at the end of like 2 or 3 scenes that I caught that I think probably could have been edited a little bit better and cut that way. So I don't know if that's on the editing side. I don't know if that's George Lucas's directing style. But I think aside from episode 4. He didn't direct any of the others. Am I correct?
Oh no, he directed all the prequels.
The prequels, but I mean like the
Oh,
originals.
oh yeah, no, he didn't direct episodes 5 or 6.
Yeah, that's what I thought. And so there was another part of me that was just thinking, like, yeah, I kind of wish I had another director here instead of George. But I think George nailed the story in here for me. So that's really all I had. It's just a really weak first act, I think. And George Lucas's directing style didn't help this movie in any sense of the imagination in regards to getting the best out of his actors. Like I think we probably Qui-Gon, I think, was probably the strongest to me. Qui-Gon and Shmi, I think, were probably my favorite actors out of this entire movie, followed by Obi-Wan's character. But what about you, Stuart? How did you feel about that?
I don't know. I'd say a good majority of the movie, not just the first act, is definitely edited in a very messy kind of way. And then also, not only with the actual film editing, but I think even with the story editing, I think if anything, that's probably what could have used like a second glance over. Because I think the story itself is good. It's just the way it's structured kind of feels off at times.
Gotcha.
Mostly because like I think looking at it, it doesn't follow the traditional beats of a hero's journey like we're used to seeing so many times in these kind of movies, especially in the original trilogy, which basically the trilogy as a whole followed a hero's journey. Not only that, but each individual film also followed the structure of the hero's journey. So I think because this one doesn't follow that same structure, that's one of the things that makes it feel like kind of awkward to watch, because it's just not structured in the way that we as like audiences are like so used to from every other movie.
Do you think that's because Anakin doesn't get introduced to like the middle of the film? Do you think, because if you're talking about hero's journey, there's a part of me that's like, well, the hero's journey should probably be Anakin's story. So maybe that's why it feels thrown off, because we're introduced to two Jedi and follow them before we get to that moment of who the main character truly is.
I think that's definitely a big part of it too. I think there's a few things. One of them, the fact that so the mentor always dies in a hero's journey, and so Qui-Gon Jinn clearly was that mentor. However, what's weird is that when he dies, he's not really passing on his last words of wisdom to Anakin. He's passing it to Obi-Wan, who,
right.
In this movie was somewhat of a minor character. I don't want to say super minor, but given the fact that like when we get to Tatooine, his lines are always like, on the ship, like away from the actual plot that's going on, things like that. Yeah. So again, I think, and again, I'm also not even going to say that wasn't a conscious decision from George Lucas. I think he really wanted people to know that the structure of the new trilogy was going to be different from the original. But again, I think because we're so used to a certain pattern of how stories are told, that was just what makes it feel really off to us in the Phantom Menace. But yeah, so I definitely see what you mean with the first act being rough. I kind of think the whole movie is a bit rough though when you look at it like that.
Yeah, no, I can understand that. And when I mean the editing, not necessarily the editing from just the first act, but I would agree with you as far as how the film structure certainly was. The editing didn't certainly help in that regards. Quick shout out to people that are watching us live. We got Bobby in the house. He says this movie was awesome. I'm glad you really enjoyed it, Bobby. Thanks for certainly coming through, man. And Marcelino in the house too. He says I heard that originally Obi-Wan was supposed to be the main character in Phantom Menace and the prequel trilogy. I mean, he is kind of like a co-lead main character. Seeing his journey with his master, him then being thrust into the Jedi Knight status with having a pupil that he didn't even pick himself, sort of thing, and really seeing how Obi-Wan has to kind of navigate it through the rest of the trilogy. I would say him and Anakin are like 1A and 1B to me when it comes to main characters still.
Yeah, I would definitely say Anakin is just a little bit more of a main character than Obi-Wan, but that's still, an in again, Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith, Obi-Wan is definitely like the close second for a main character.
Yeah, absolutely. So with the cons out of the way, let's talk about a little bit about the pros, or at least some of the things that in here I put, Phantom Menace continues to grow on me a little each time I watch it. I feel like I become less critical of this film. I do think that the story is strong in certain aspects, at least in the sense of like establishing a great groundwork for what's to eventually come. And I say I'll always appreciate the prequels to allowing us to see the Jedi sort of in their prime and really a true master and apprentice sort of scenario. I really enjoyed the relationship between Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan in here. If there is anything that I do question. One thing I would have liked to have seen more of, and I'm hoping that this is something that they explore novel wise or in animated form, and maybe this is something they talked about in Clone Wars, and I missed it. But I do wonder how Obi-Wan fully felt about Qui-Gon taking Anakin as his Padawan. Like I wonder if Obi-Wan felt some type of way about having to not only train Anakin, but like if he ever felt some level of like his Jedi, his Jedi master. I don't want to say didn't care for him anymore, but like his last remaining words are train the boy. It's not even necessarily directed towards Obi-Wan, who's been his apprentice for like the longest time. It's like his focus is solely on the child. And there's a part of me that wonders if there's ever been a little bit of a level of resentment from Obi-Wan in regards to that. I know he's a Jedi master, so he's supposed to be perfect in that sense, right? Like he should be able to handle those emotions, but we clearly know that that's not the case. Like they still have to deal and struggle with their own emotions. So I would have liked to have seen something like that explored in a comic book and the novel and an animated form. Just see like when your master that you're with dies and perishes, and his last words is about somebody else. It's like damn, bro. But I did love their relationship in this movie.
That's an aspect I actually never thought of between Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon Jinn's relationship. I always saw it as like I don't know. I don't think Obi-Wan like you said, the Jedi definitely know how to repress their emotions to a certain extent, but of course they're all human or alien, whatever you want to refer to that as. But that all being said, I don't think there's any animosity between Obi-Wan and Anakin. I feel like if George Lucas wanted there to be, he definitely would have like had some little bit of it, like, at least subtly referenced in the Clone Wars, or maybe like have it be that Obi-Wan is probably holding Anakin back because of, that like subliminal animosity. But I don't think there was really any implication of that in Attack of the Clones. So for me, I don't think so. But again, that is a really interesting aspect that I never thought about, that I never really thought about before until now.
And I only say that because I'm just like, there's still a lot of time period of Obi-Wan and Anakin's training and life we haven't really explored much of. And I kind of want to see what those early days were like when he was a legit Padawan, like before we even get to his time in Attack of the Clones. I really want to know, like, has Obi-Wan grown through that training where he no longer feels that way by the time we get to Attack of the Clones? But was there something like that within like the first, like, 4 or 5 months of his training?
Yeah. Dang,
But yeah,
I think you're right. That is something that the comic books should. I think it would be a perfect thing for the comic books to explore, like with young Anakin learning to be a Jedi.
I would love to see something like that. But I did enjoy the relationship between Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan. You can clearly tell that Qui-Gon certainly trusts him. They have very much a professional relationship in here. And for this being our first time seeing a true Jedi and master and apprentice sort of combination, I thought it was really presented well. And so I really appreciate what George was able to establish for us as we go through the rest of our Star Wars stuff.
Something I love about the dynamic, though, between Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon is that while Obi-Wan takes a lot from his master in Attack of the Clones, he's not really a carbon copy, because something looking back at Phantom Menace is that Qui-Gon Jinn was not afraid to kind of go against the Jedi Council to an extent. But we see like Obi-Wan, while he definitely still had a lot of respect for Qui-Gon and definitely took a lot of his teachings to heart, when it came to the way he did things with Anakin, like we see this this in Attack of the Clones, the Clone Wars, and Revenge of the Sith. He is very much a Jedi that is very by the books, goes strictly by the Jedi way, which is something that I don't know. It's something that I think Qui-Gon wouldn't be disappointed by at all. I think he would still be incredibly proud to see the kind of Jedi that
Oh,
Obi-Wan had
absolutely.
become.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it is really cool to see. Yeah, I don't know. It's always cool to see when a mentor can take, when a student can take certain lessons from a mentor, but still be their own man as they grow up.
I do love the line from Yoda in this towards the end when he says, "I will train Anakin," and he says, "Qui-Gon's defiance," like that you need not, sort of thing. He's like, "Yeah, please don't, please don't take that up. Like of all the lessons that Qui-Gon could have given you, please don't bring his defiance into this." But yeah, there is definitely a hint of Qui-Gon in Obi-Wan for sure.
Maybe that was why Yoda accepted it. He's like, I don't want you turning to Qui-Gon, so I'm just going to let you train him, so that way you're not disobeying me.
Yeah, maybe. But Liam Neeson as Qui-Gon in here was absolutely brilliant, man. He carries this movie for me. I absolutely love his interactions, especially when he's on Tatooine with Shmi. If there's any like veteran on the set, you can definitely tell it's Liam Neeson for sure. I think he just really established Qui-Gon, and I was always a big fan. Especially, look, Qui-Gon's a green lightsaber type of guy, so I'm always gonna love me some Qui-Gon for sure. But even in the last battle between him and Darth Maul, when he gets separated from Obi-Wan in the laser walls or the barriers, there is I always find the scene interesting when he deactivates his lightsaber and he gets on his knees and he just meditates, before he faces off against Darth Maul. There's a part of me that wonders if at that time Qui-Gon knows what his fate is going to be, and so he maybe tries to tap into the living force so that if he does pass away, he can still be connected in some sense or another. But he just goes into his Jedi trance, his Jedi meditation sort of thing, and I think that just speaks volumes as to who he is. That despite knowing what's coming and being in a very life or death tense situation, he falls back and relies on the force to get him prepared and ready for the big moment that's about to happen. So I always love that scene. It's very brief, but I love it.
For me, I see it as like him just kind of prepping, because there was a line in the very beginning where, he mentions to Obi-Wan, while yes, it's going to be mindful about the future, never do it at the expense of the present. And so I think that's what he was more focused on. He was focused on the fact that at this point, there is nothing I can do. So there's no use in basically doing what Darth Maul was doing, which is, of course, pacing back and forth, when you do sports, that tends to be how you hype yourself up. But for him, for a Jedi, no, he like meditation is how a Jedi kind of mentally prepares for a battle. And so I think that was him, being smart, doing like, what he needed to do to mentally prepare for the battle, in his own way, personally.
No, I could totally see that, him certainly staying in the present moment sort of thing. Yeah, that's definitely part of his teachings. What's up, Caleb? Good to see you in here, Caleb. He says, I feel like Lucas made Qui-Gon the main character of Phantom Menace because he wanted a new character to kind of be a fresh slate for new fans watching episode 1 as their first Star Wars movie. That's definitely a possibility too. Yeah, I could easily see that for sure. Definitely a great first character, a fresh new character for us to establish with, because Qui-Gon after this definitely becomes one of my favorites. And I will say, after watching more and more Star Wars over the years, seeing people, lightsaber battles and, how people have managed to survive after countless lightsaber battles, taking lightsabers to the guts and to the stomach and having their body parts slashed off and still surviving. I'm like, poor Qui-Gon, man. Like, why you gotta off my boy like that? Like he probably could have survived that.
If it was Dave Filoni writing, he definitely would have survived it.
Caleb says, but he didn't really think that through because Qui-Gon does in the end of the movie. That kind of throws off the perspective of who is the main character of the prequels. Yeah, I mean, I definitely never viewed him as the main character of the prequels, but definitely sort of like that that vessel, if you will, to establish the main characters that would eventually go on to become Anakin and, like I said, 1B in Obi-Wan. But a really great first take and a fresh character to really let people know, like, hey, we're in a completely different history, a completely different time period. Here's some Jedi Masters that you've never seen and in their prime too. So absolutely love Qui-Gon, man. He's such a fan favorite for me in this film.
Mhm.
And I think that has a lot to do with Liam Neeson and really the idea of like these characters. And look, I say George Lucas's directing was an issue for me, but I also do think it's the CGI aspect of a lot of green screen and blue screen. And look at this tennis ball, pretend that this is, and I'm sure that probably doesn't help a lot of the actors really get out of it. So it's almost like a double whammy in regards to performances. But if there is anybody that I think that really showcased just how good they are acting wise, it's Liam Neeson to be able to navigate all that.
Oh yeah. I always find it so funny. Some actors, the way they react to green screen compared to others, because you have Ian McKellen, who did not like working on the Hobbit because of all the green screen. And then you got Samuel Jackson in Attack of the Clones. And his thing is, dude, I used to pretend with the stick all the time when I was a kid. This is no different from that.
Yeah, very much so. Very much so. A couple other things that really jumped out to me. I did want to talk about Jake Lloyd a little bit here because, I was very much. First off, I gotta pull up something about Jake Lloyd real quick. First off, for me, when I watched this film, I definitely did think his performance was cringy for sure, but I still overall liked the film. And I think for me, I definitely fell into that trap of, especially over a few years, like just bashing the film, all of a sudden being like, oh, I didn't like this movie at all, kind of thing. Like I definitely fell into that camp. But I eventually came out of it. I eventually came around to really appreciating what the Phantom Menace certainly was. But I gotta say, the more and more that I watch Jake Lloyd in here and his performance, it it's really grown on me in the sense of going from cringy to charming. There's something really soft and innocent about him. His dialogue, while at times maybe not the, are you an angel, bro? You better stop trying to smooth talk this girl. You better stop trying. You don't even know what you're doing, little boy. You want to come back to my place? Come on, let me show you my robot. That's what they're calling it now. Come on, this Anakin is too smooth for his age, man. So some of his dialogue, not not necessarily the best, but the kid was, I don't even know how old the kid was during that time, and there are some moments in here that I really do enjoy from him, like especially when they're sitting around the table and he tells his mom, is like, mom, you tell me all the time, like people don't want to help each other out in the universe, like there's some really great sweet moments that he has in here that I can't sit back and expect Jake Lloyd to have an Oscar performance in this particular film. And so I feel like every time I watch him now, he's become a really charming kid to me. And I can see why George Lucas and them probably went ahead and cast this kid despite maybe any lack of experience that he certainly had. But it's not so much cringy for me so much anymore as it is just pretty charming to kind of see some of his scenes in here.
He did have a little bit of actually acting experience, though, because I do remember him in Jingle All the Way before that movie, before the
That
Phantom
wasn't
Menace came
after.
out.
That wasn't after
No,
this. No.
Jingle
Okay.
All the Way, I think was like 96, but like
Okay.
Phantom Menace was 99.
Okay.
Yeah,
I
so
stand
yeah,
corrected then. Yeah.
yeah, he had a bit of experience, but at the same time, I think like one of the weird, again, kind of interesting directing choices by George Lucas is that like the way some of his scenes are filmed, not when he's like with the other characters, but when he's with himself, especially like during the end, the climax with him and
Oh,
R2,
R2.
it's almost like it's directed at a completely different audience. It's almost like for him, like his scenes feel like they are made for a movie aimed at like a really young audience. Like I know that technically the movie is PG, so it's already aimed at a young audience, but to me, like the Star Wars prequels have always felt like even though Revenge of the Sith is the only PG-13 movie out of them, Attack of the Clones and Phantom Menace has always felt like PG-13 movies, except for the scenes with him alone in the spaceship. They feel like they come from a movie that was definitely aimed at kids. And I think, again, like the more I watch the prequels, the more I kind of realize a lot of the decisions that I always thought was bad writing, I feel like was actually on purpose. I feel like George Lucas did that kind of thing on purpose. So I think with the way he plays the character of Anakin, he plays it like he's in a movie that's meant for kids, whereas like a lot of the adults, and this is where kind of like the weird
Yeah, awkward.
imbalance of the movie, I guess you could say, is because when the adults are on screen, they play it like it's a movie for a really
For
older
adults.
audience, especially like with the plot. The fact that this all has to do with a trade federation making a blockade to block Naboo from being able to trade with other planets. That is the most like not kid oriented plot like I could ever think of, because that is very much like it's like the most political way you could have taken a franchise like Star Wars, and kids do not give a crap about politics. And so I think that's where like one of the imbalances of the movies that like I think as I was younger I didn't like, but I think as I get older I actually kind of learned to appreciate a little bit more. Like I don't know if it works as a whole like as a movie, but I think it's a very unique directing choice. And the more I kind of like look back on the prequels as a whole as an adult, the more I kind of learn to respect a lot of George Lucas's decision, even if they're not the kind of decisions I would have made personally. I can at least like I think I get more of an understanding of why he did it as I get older.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I'm sorry if you guys can hear my dogs barking in the background. They won't shut the F up right now. But no, I totally agree with you in that regards. Because you're right. I mean, even when Jar Jar Binks is on the screen, it's like immediately like, okay, this just becomes a completely different movie. So you're right. Maybe directing wise, when George has, Jar Jar or Anakin in the scene, he definitely has to direct it a certain way, except for certain scenes. Because there are moments when Anakin is with other people, like I said, the dinner table, when he's with his mom before he's getting ready to leave, when he's in the Jedi Council, those feel like they are taking the Anakin character really seriously for an older audience, for him to kind of play in that world a little bit too. But there definitely are scenes in here where it's like, okay, this is definitely for the kids for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, Jake Lloyd's performance has definitely changed for me over time and becoming one that's a little bit more charming. If there is anything that's still cringeworthy to me, it's just the awkward relationship between him and Padme. Still, like
Yeah.
it's still creepy as hell to me. Like it really is.
I always think of the Weird Al song, "The Saga Begins." Oh, do you see him hitting on the queen, though he's just 9 and she's 14? Yeah, he's probably gonna marry her someday.
It's just so weird. Like yeah.
Yeah, the "Are You an Angel" scene makes me cringe every single time. I don't think I will ever not cringe at that scene.
The angel scene when he starts talking to her.
Yeah.
The scene that makes me cringe is when they're leaving Tatooine and he's in space and he's cold, and she comes over and she gives him the blanket and he gives her the pendant that will last with her the longest time and stuff. And then they start talking about like things are gonna my feelings for you are gonna change when we get to course. Like feelings, like you just met this kid, like what are you talking about? He's like, I care about you too. Like, oh no, like no, oh no, it just hits me, bro. I can't.
Okay, so like talking about the editing again, like that is actually a scene I feel like you could just completely cut from the movie.
Just cut it. I don't even need it. I don't even need it. Besides the idea of him giving her the pendant, I don't need it in the film, honestly. It just makes me, it gives me chills.
I feel like you could have done that. Yeah, we could have replaced it with like a 1 minute scene of him giving her the pendant, or something.
Yeah, it didn't have to be that kind of intimate, but yeah, other than that, I really enjoyed Jake Lloyd's performance over the years. I have two females in here that really stand out to me, man. I think Shmi Skywalker is a very underrated character. Sometimes I wonder if we forget the idea that she literally immaculately conceived the child. I mean, when Anakin Skywalker is referred to as the chosen one, he's for a reason. The fact that this man has no daddy, I just it's something about that. I'm just like, it's always a great reminder to certainly have. And I think for me too, now that I'm a parent, and I've got a kid of my own, her role just hits me so much more differently now, in the sense of her realizing she's got to let go of her son. I think as a mother, she does a really great job of like holding back her emotions even more than she did to try and possibly look strong for Anakin in here. But the idea of knowing that your son is has a greater purpose in life and you don't want to hold him back. It is a little bit weird, like, hey, go with the stranger. But clearly, like you've seen what this guy is capable of. You know he's a Jedi. You know, you want, at the end of the day, I think as parents, we all want certainly what's best for our children. And you know, I don't know. I've just come to appreciate Shmi Skywalker in regards to what she's had to go through in raising this kid by herself, what she must think about the idea of like this kid's got abilities. I don't know how to explain it. You know, I can't give him a bigger purpose in life besides, you know, us being slaves here until this opportunity arises and this Jedi comes. I mean, talk about the idea of the Force really working its magic here and bringing these two characters together. I don't know. I think for me, just as a parent, that whole scene of seeing her having to let go of her son, just it actually choked me up. I think this is probably the first time that I've seen the Phantom Menace since having a kid myself, and it really kind of choked me up seeing them having to separate themselves from each other.
Mm-hmm. And it's only going to get worse if you rewatch Attack of the Clones.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen Attack of the Clones more times than I can probably count, man. Definitely more times than I've seen the Phantom Menace for sure. It's the Phantom Menace for me just never really had that much replayability. And it's the sense that the only aspect that I remember literally sometimes going back and putting the DVD in is I would just go to the final chapter of the film and just watch the Duel of the Fates over and over again. Aside from that, you know, it didn't have a lot of replay value for me. But I do think Shmi Skywalker is certainly an underrated character. And, you know,
credit to both the actors for Lloyd and the actress playing Shmi. Dang, they have amazing chemistry. Like they feel like a real mother and son. They have it feels like a genuine dynamic between the two of them, which I never know, like, because obviously I'm not an actor, so I've always been curious how hard that is to really pull off, like, you know, fooling the audience into thinking that you've had this long history with someone, that, you know, the two of you are related, that kind of stuff. I imagine that, like, you know, that takes real skill as an actor to be able to pull that off.
It really does. And I love that scene when they're getting ready to leave. And I think a couple things come into play for that one. It's like, one, we clearly know what the outcome of this is going to be. You know, when he says, I will come back for you, mom, and I will save you, sort of thing. And she says, do you think we'll see each other again? And he says, yeah, I do. Like you can tell, like, just the sadness in his voice, and her trying to uplift her son and give him some hope, and the idea of, don't look back, it gets me every time. And then you got the John Williams music that comes in, it just adds a whole level of emotions to it, man. And I really love that sequence. So I agree. How actors are able to replicate that kind of family chemistry and love, I don't know how they're able to do it, but you can definitely feel it between Anakin and Shmi in these scenes for sure.
You know what's funny? When you brought up John Williams, the thing that just popped into my mind is kind of the realization that, even though episodes 5 and 6 are really, really good movies, in fact, episode 5 is my favorite Star Wars movie. I think that one thing George Lucas does better than any Star Wars director out there, he knows when to use a score and what score to use better than any Star Wars movie out there. And I will take that one to my grave. Episodes 5 and 6 have great music, and they're utilized very well, but nowhere near to the level as New Hope and the prequel trilogies.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And then lastly in here, another standout character for me is Padme. Padme is another really standout character for me. And I don't know why it just hits me now, or maybe I knew this before, but it just became that much more apparent when I watched this time around. She comes up with the whole plan herself, bro. The decision for her to fight for her planet all comes from Padme. There's no generals talking in her ear like, hey, I've got this plan that we should do. The idea that she wants to go to they take her to first she doesn't want to leave Naboo, right? But they're like, we got to take you to Coruscant because there's something brewing here. So she approaches the Senate. She doesn't like the idea of how politics takes forever to solve anything. Like, I'm sorry, but in the 25,000, 3,000, however long Star Wars is separated from our time period, that hasn't changed, Padme. Things still take forever to get done politically. So the fact that she's like, you know what? Take me back to Naboo. hey, you Gungan, you mentioned something about you got an army. Like, look, I got a plan. Let's just go back and let's just take our planet back. Like, this is literally her plan, to the point to where Palpatine like underestimates her. Like, she
Mhm.
literally outsmarts Palpatine in this movie, and he's like, "Why? Wait, why? She's going back? That wasn't part of my plan. Like, my visions didn't interpret that she was gonna get an army together, and then and then infiltrate the the castle at the same time." But she comes up with this brilliant plan all on her own and saves her planet. And I think there is something for me that appreciates the Gungan battle a little bit more, in the sense that this is really a band of rebels, facing off against a big, mighty army. And the fact that they were able to win out the day, led by their princess here, I think just speaks volumes as to who Padme is before we even get to see her in something like Attack of the Clones or Revenge of the Sith sort of thing. And I don't know why that never really truly dawned on me. And I'm like, wait a minute, she's really come up with this whole damn plan on her own. Like, there's nobody else giving her plan perspective. She's breaking it down on the battlefield as to like how she wants this plan to certainly go. And it's brilliant to watch her outsmart Palpatine in this film. It really is.
And on top of it, I love that it's a plan that all of her like advisors advise against. It's a plan that, on paper everyone was like, this is a terrible idea, but it ends up working out in the long run. Especially because of, the unknown factor to both sides, which is Anakin being way too badass for a kid his age.
Yeah, absolutely.
uh And something I love. Okay, so one of my favorite scenes in this movie, I will admit, has one issue, which is that Natalie Portman, being a very new actress that's at the time, being very young, she does deliver this line a little more wooden than I would have liked, but I still do appreciate so much the scene where it was them asking the Gungans for help and her humbling herself and saying that, no,
Yes.
we're not asking for your help, we're begging for your help. And that being like what the Gungans had wanted to hear for so long. The fact that like, oh, wow, so you're saying you no longer see yourselves as being superior to us. Like you see us as equals now. We'll help you.
Yeah.
That's what
Me
we
so
wanted this
like
whole.
this.
Yes, exactly. I loved that scene. I
I
loved
do
it
love.
because that's all it took was just to like,
Humble
give them a
yourself, right?
humble yourself, give humility, and just say, hey, we are all equals here. And yeah, I thought that was beautiful that's what brought them all together to fight in this giant battle. And I know I keep bringing up Clone Wars and just like what this movie like leads to later on, but it does lead to like one of my favorite Jar Jar moments where he has that exact moment that she had, where he's convincing the Gungan people to help her because, basically she's in trouble and they're like, what, should we actually do something? And Jar Jar's response is, of course we should, because for a fact she would be doing that for us. She has done this for us, in the
Mhm.
past. And yeah, I love something Star Wars always does a good job at, whether it's George Lucas or other Star Wars fans writing the show, as we see in the Clone Wars, it always knows how to make
Yeah.
a full circle,
Yeah.
in one way or another.
Yeah, it truly does. It truly does. And I agree. I do wish Natalie had delivered that line a little bit better, but that is a line that I'm a really big fan of too. I remember watching it again yesterday, thinking the same thing. Like, man, this is a really great moment, seeing everybody get on their knees and humble themselves before the Gungan King, sort of thing. It really worked to their advantage. But yeah, man, there's a lot about this movie that I feel like I pick up each and every time that I watch, that I walk away from kind of really appreciating this film a little bit more than what I certainly did before, man. And that's always a sign of a good movie that stands the test of time. And it for me, in the sense that it kind of echoes A New Hope, in that sense that, like, for me, I always felt the first act of A New Hope was like a little bit boring to me as a kid. It's something like I could easily find myself having fallen asleep and then waking up to when they're actually getting, brought on board the Death Star, and then things really kind of pick up for me a little bit. And I feel this kind of same way here about the Phantom Menace. So I do feel in that sense it kind of echoes A New Hope. For me, not the strongest out of the trilogy. I kind of, maybe this is probably like my least favorite of the trilogy, but when I look at the original trilogy, A New Hope for me is probably like my least favorite of the three. And I like A New Hope too, but I grew up, first off, Empire is one of my favorites. I grew up heavily on Return of the Jedi, so it has a special place in my heart. So naturally, I think A New Hope comes in last for me. So for me, it feels like it echoes A New Hope in that sense, not story beat wise, but just in the sense of how it's layered for us.
Mhm. You're definitely right with the New Hope with the very beginning part. I think that's like one of the most challenging things about getting someone into Star Wars is if New Hope is their first movie watching, they're going to be really confused in the very first what is it like? We followed them for like 15-20 minutes before we finally meet Luke Skywalker.
Yeah, but like similar to how this movie, like a Phantom Menace, starts off, right? Like I do think the beginning of A New Hope is pretty eye popping in the sense of like the Empire coming onto the Rebel ship, seeing Darth Vader for the first time, and he's choking people out and stuff, right? Like that's a really great way to suck you in, and then it takes a minute to have to catch back up, sort of thing, right? And it's the same thing with the Phantom Menace. We get introduced to the Jedi in their prime, seeing them use their lightsabers, like, oh snap! And then it takes a minute before it actually hits an act that really draws you kind of back in. So yeah, man, I don't know if that's just how George Lucas likes to direct his movies, but it's definitely very similar in that regards to A New Hope, I think.
Definitely.
But other than that, man, one last note I had in here, just the idea of seeing how fearful Yoda certainly was of Anakin being trained. I mean, the overshadow here of like what's to come is abundantly clear. It's freaking palpable. Nobody trusts this kid already because of how old he is, because of the fear that he certainly carries with him. And I think that's another reason why there's a part of me that's so fascinated to want to explore Anakin's training at such an earlier age before we even get to Attack of the Clones, because of the fact that he's that young. How much did he ask for his mom? How much fear and, trepidation does this kid truly have before he even embraces the idea of like the rules of being a Jedi? Like even Qui-Gon in this movie says, look, being a Jedi, the training is going to be hard. It's going to be difficult. Like the idea that he literally has had 9 years living a life a certain way and then having to realize like you can't do those things anymore. Can you imagine telling a 9-10-year-old kid like, hey, I know you used to love playing with toys, but nah, you got to cut that shit out, kid. Like that's for me, I think the journey that I'm fascinated in for Anakin. I think at the end of the Phantom Menace, because of the story that they told, because of what Qui-Gon, like even the idea of Anakin saying, Qui-Gon, I don't want to be a problem here. And he's like, you're not, like really convincing this kid, like, hey, we're going to make you a Jedi no matter what. And the fact that the council doesn't want it. And I kind of want to see what, how he navigates and handles these trainings. So I hope we get something in comic book form, novel form to kind of see that explored a little bit more. Because I definitely would love to see that. But yeah, man, I really enjoyed this movie, seeing it again.
Same here. Okay, so one last thing before we fully close out. So it's a two-part question. Part one of the question. What letter grade would you give this movie?
Oh God.
There's a reason I'm asking. So like as a whole, like this movie, knowing its place in the Star Wars universe, like seeing what it leads to and everything like that, what kind of letter grade would you give it?
God dang. Because the story is strong for me, especially based off of what I know it's going to build up to. The acting itself is just really rough, man. The directing and acting in here is rough for me. So that'll definitely take some points away. The music is there. CGI is there. I'm leaning like a B-, man.
B-. All right. Now, same question, except this is a universe where this is the only Star Wars movie to have ever been made, and this is the one this is the only movie and it's a standalone movie, but nothing about the movie itself has changed. What letter grade would you give it?
Oh man, probably like I probably would go a straight B+ here for sure.
Wait, really? Oh, I would go the opposite direction. I would have given it like a D-. I think.
Really? For like a standoff, like the first film of the trilogy?
Oh, no, I mean, if there were no other Star Wars movies, if the only Star Wars movie we got like ever was the Phantom Menace, so like basically this doesn't set up anything. It's just a movie on its own.
On its own. Oh, then yeah, I see what you mean. Then I thought you meant like the actual beginning of a trilogy. But if this was just a standalone movie, then yeah, it would probably be like it would definitely be like a $5 DVD bin sort of collection, like a cult classic, like C minus type of thing.
I asked
I
just
don't know,
because, like,
maybe
oh,
like a C, maybe like a C. I don't know.
see, okay. I asked just because as we're talking about this, something I kind of realized one of my favorite things about Phantom Menace is kind of like the power of retrospect and seeing like what this like builds up to and how it leads to something really cool later on. And I think that's what makes it like a fantastic movie for me. So it's like the Star Wars fan in me wants to give this movie like a B, but I'm also like kind of thinking like if I was watching this movie in a void where this was the only Star Wars movie that was like out there, maybe a D, D minus.
I mean, because my thing is like, if I had seen this movie and there were no other Star Wars movies, though, I probably would be pissed. Like, there's a part of me that would want to see more. Like, you can't show me lightsaber swords and this incredible lightsaber battle. A great Jedi and apprentice combination here, and how the Jedi Council sort of works. Like, there are things in here that would want me to I need a sequel to this. Like, so I would be really bummed if this movie never got a sequel or any, if it was like just a standalone film. Um yeah, I think it would probably been one of the biggest disservices in cinematic history, probably, for sure.
Definitely.
But yeah, guys, this does make me now want to put together a report card for Phantom Menace. So maybe I'll fill out a report card today and then drop it tomorrow for you guys. So I'll give my official grade on the Phantom Menace for you guys this weekend, and I'll send you a report card too, Stuart, if you want to go ahead and fill one out.
Sounds good.
But yeah, guys, listen, if you have the opportunity this weekend to go to the movies, check out Phantom Menace, the 25th anniversary re-release of this film. I don't think you guys will certainly be disappointed. If anything, I think it'll take you down nostalgia lane and maybe walk away impressed a little bit more than you certainly originally thought. Caleb does say, I think we should still get Star Wars animated focus on Anakin and Obi-Wan set between episodes 1 and 2. I think
I would
so.
love that.
I would love that. Maybe that's a new Tales of the Jedi series if we eventually get one. But I absolutely would love that. But look, guys, at the end of the day, these are simply our A+ opinions. We always want to know yours. Again, don't forget, 2 p.m., I'm dropping my Acolyte sneak peek review that came at the tail end of the Phantom Menace. I'm probably going to try and see if I can record an actual trailer review for the brand new Acolyte trailer that we wind up getting. Maybe that's something that I drop tomorrow for you guys. We do have a Tales of the Empire series review that will probably be dropping on Monday for you guys, coming from Stewart, and then tomorrow I'll drop my Phantom Menace report card for you guys, along with A+ Hero Report as a group is officially ranking the live action Star Wars movies. So we will be dropping our consensus rankings for you guys for tomorrow as well. So a lot of Star Wars to certainly celebrate around here, guys. If you're not subscribed to us on YouTube, please go ahead and do so, and follow us on social media. Stuart, if you're on social media, where can people find you, man?
You guys can follow me on Instagram at TurboStew01.
And follow us here at A+ Opinions. And we'll certainly be back later on this week with a ton more Star Wars content for you guys. But until then, do me a big favor. As always, take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and keep it A+. May the Force be with you. We'll talk to you later. Bye.